Hey everybody, it's me Ashish, and before we begin, I just want to give a quick thank you to everybody listening, watching, and supporting the podcast. It means the world to us, and we're so appreciative. I just want to let you guys know that you guys can always ask us questions, give us segment ideas, and keep up with the fun, all at AshishandFriends.com. We're on Twitter at AshishandPals, we're on Instagram at AshishandFriends, and hey, we're even on Facebook, facebook.com/AshishandFriendsPod. If you're watching this video, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. All that following and liking and subscribing will help us grow and keep going, so we appreciate it so much. And once again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Yes. Welcome to another great episode of the Ashish and Friends podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing the NBA playoffs. They're starting right about this time, and we're going to go and do a bracket with the group. As always, I'm your host, Ashish. You can catch me on Instagram and on Twitter at Ashish Airy. I'm joined by my longtime friends and co-hosts. We've got Ryan in the house. We've got Dev at Superlaser. We've got Shahan at Shahan Jayaraja. So we've got the NBA playoffs, a very exciting time. We're just going to go through, we'll go round by round. So with that said, in the first round, we've got the Lakers and the Portland Trailblazers. Lakers coming in as one of the favorites, and I think they're just a dominant team. Of course, Damian Lillard and the Blazers have been pretty fantastic during the bubble. But at the end of the day, I think it'll be a little competitive, pretty competitive, but I think the Lakers will easily win that series. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I have Lakers in 6. I think it's going to be a little bit of trouble, but I think the Lakers are planning to do a little bit of warming up in this series. They clearly weren't trying in the first half of the bubble.
I think that it absolutely sucks that Portland could only get up to the 8th seed. I honestly think that Portland, the way that they're playing right now, could potentially beat anybody except for the Lakers and the Clippers in the playoffs. But unfortunately, they're playing one of those teams. So I think unfortunately, the Damian Lillard's incredible bubble stops here.
For sure. I think with the next year, having Nurkic the whole season, you got Melo, you got CJ. Hopefully they'll have a better seed and do better next year.
I mean, this is legitimately maybe the third best team in the West right now. But unfortunately, again, they're playing one of the top two.
That's what happens. All right. So next we've got in the Western, we've got the number 2 seed LA Clippers versus obviously my favorite team, the Dallas Mavericks. Unfortunately, we couldn't move up during this bubble. We had a couple of chances, played a lot of tight games. You know, I think it'll be a great experience for Luka and KP and this young core. Do I think they can win 2 games? No, I think they could probably win one, maybe steal one. But I think the Clippers easily win probably 4-1. What do you think, Ryan?
I agree with that. I just think it's a matchup nightmare for the Dallas Mavericks, and their depth is hurt, missing pieces in the bubble. So I agree with Ashish. I think it's 1 game at best for the Mavs.
And obviously, we're both Mavs fans, like diehard ones. And obviously, we have a really young team. We miss Powell, we miss Brunson, and we played the Clippers in the bubble, and it's a pretty tight game. But now they're getting Lou Williams back and Montrezl Harrell. So, yeah, not looking great. So I think, what do you think, Shahan?
Yeah.
What do you think?
So a little bit of insight. Whenever this podcast ends, you know, we stop recording, right? We turn it off and keep talking usually afterwards. And what we've said the last couple of weeks is, my God, what is Luka Doncic going to do when he has to both cover both the Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and also be covered by both of them? Because this might be a little bit of a shock, but Kawhi's not going to just leave and stand with I literally can't. Dorian Finney-Smith. He's not just going to stand there looking at him, right? It's probably going to cost him. I think that this is going to be, unfortunately, a fairly easy series for the LA Clippers.
Well, you know what? Watch out for MKG people. Mavs coming for the future.
Are they going to play him?
It's looking bright. You know, they started using him later games in the bubble. But like I said, I think it'll be interesting. It'll be good for the team. And of course, I'm interested to see what Luka brings to the playoffs. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. Next up, we've got the Denver Nuggets and the Utah Jazz. I think one of the more interesting first round matchups. Personally, you know, I'm a huge fan of Jokic. Obviously, Michael Porter Jr. has really come on in the bubble. Really, you know, they've got Jamal Murray. And with the Jazz, you got like a new team that came together this season with Conley. And obviously, Donovan Mitchell's there and Rudy Gobert. You know, thanks, Rudy Gobert, for shutting down the league. But I think this is a really tight matchup. For me personally, I think the Nuggets are a better team. I think Jokic can definitely carry the Nuggets in case the rest of the players weren't doing that well. So for me, I see it being 4-2, maybe even 4-3, but Denver Nuggets winning this one.
These are probably the two teams. I don't know if this is true for everyone, but like Utah and Denver like often become the same team in my head, and I get them mixed up all the time.
Happens to
And
me too.
yeah,
They're that team out west.
Yeah, so I find it really interesting that the two teams are playing right here. To me, I'm gonna go with the Nuggets just because I think like I'm a fan. Like I just like watching Joker play, so I just want to see him play more.
So I will be the contrarian here. So heading into this season, Utah had a really good playoffs last year. They had a really good season last year, and they kind of were waiting for Mike Conley to find his way to hope that they could kind of take that step forward. Look, Michael Porter Jr. has been really good in the bubble. The rest of the Nuggets have not. It's been a little bit of a struggle for them the last couple of weeks, and I just look at this team and I don't know. Maybe this is just me not taking them seriously enough coming forward. But like they seem like the perfect team that's good in the regular season and not good in the playoffs, right? Like they have all these players, all these guys who are able to contribute. They move the ball super well, but they don't defend at a high enough level for me. Whereas the Jazz are an elite defensive team. And when you look at their stars, Jokic again hasn't been his best in the bubble, and Donovan Mitchell in the last couple of games has been tremendous. Now, at the same time, obviously with Utah, like they never really did manage to totally find it out, during the regular season. But I'm optimistic. I think that in this bubble, I think this has been a really good opportunity for them to come together. I think that they have a really good matchup for Jokic with obviously Rudy Gobert, the center from the Jazz, as Ryan might call him. And I think that they have a really good opportunity to potentially pull off an upset here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Denver has more depth at this point and more players to turn to. I think it hurts that Utah has Bogan Bogdanovic that's out, which is one of their starters, one of their main players. And I think it's solely because of depth in the 7-game series. I have to go with the Nuggets.
Have you guys taken into account, though, that, yes, Rudy Gobert did shut down the NBA, but not Michael Porter Jr. I was right. Never mind. That he's an anti-vaxxer. Like, they could literally just get, like, rubella or something. They could get, they could get anything. Who's to know?
Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, I think the Jazz could win, but hoping the NBA staff takes care of them. I really like Paul Millsap as a player too, and having him on the Nuggets is great. Obviously a Jazz, like really great on the Jazz when he used to play for them, but clearly we got consensus here, so we're gonna move Nuggets to the next round. Sorry, Shahan.
Remember, guys, remember when it happens.
Yes, remember to call Shahan and be like, you're wrong. So we've got the Houston Rockets matching up the Oklahoma Thunder. Clearly, Westbrook's going to miss a couple of games with a quad strain, I think. You've got the Chris Paul Heat versus the Rockets. I think it'll be very tight. I'm very surprised the Thunder even made the playoffs, to be honest. Really thought it was a rebuilding team, but I think it'll be actually quite tight. And right here, I'm just going to have to choose the Rockets because I think they have enough scoring power to actually like get the win. So I'm gonna go with like 4-3. I think the Rockets will win this series.
I'm actually on the contrary on this. I just think the Rockets have some injury concerns with Westbrook and Gordon, which are the main two other scorers on that team, and they don't have a center to guard Steven Adams whatsoever unless they put Chandler out there. So I think that's a matchup nightmare. And also I think Paul is going to come with a vengeance just because of what happened last year, and he's a good player. So I think it might be 4-3 on the opposite for the Thunder.
So I love to hate Houston sports as much as anybody, right? I love to, talk shit. I love to poke fun, all that sort of stuff, right? But like, I really do feel like we do not take, we do not give James Harden enough credit. James Harden is one of the top 5 players in the NBA. He is everything that people say he is. Look, I mean, I think that the MVPs that he won were probably right, but like this is a guy who's finished top 2 in MVP voting for like the last 5 years straight, right? Like this is insane.
4 out of the last 5 years.
That's insane, right? Like who's had a run like that? Basically nobody. And
LeBron.
Look, I think, yeah, that's sort of my point, right? And so with James Harden, I mean, I think that you're talking about a player who has, relatively gotten it done in the playoffs. His efficiency is going to drop, his scoring is going to drop, and we're going to make a big deal about it, but they're going to advance, right? And I think that I look at this OKC team, I look at a team that I feel like is sort of really system oriented. They're a team that plays well together. They're a team that plays above their heads. And to me, again, this is like what I feel about Denver, right? They're a team that again did play above their heads in the regular season. And I feel like once you go into a 7-game series, that starts to cost you. You don't play above your head in the playoffs. You play below your head in the playoffs. And Ryan mentioned Steven Adams. I don't see that. He's not necessarily a guy who's going to kill them offensively, right? He's a guy who maybe gets some boards. But I think that the Rockets have the best player in the series. And if they can withstand the early games, right? Like if this does go to 7 and you get Russell Westbrook back and you get Eric Gordon healthy, I think that the later this series goes, the better news it is for the Houston Rockets. So I'm going to pick the Rockets to win.
Nice. All right, so I'm actually going to agree because I think that James Harden is just so disrespected. Like, this is a great player, and just because he happens to be on these absolutely bizarrely constructed teams that Daryl Morey keeps throwing out there, like, he just doesn't get the respect he deserves. And I think especially one of the things that we know gets to Harden is, like, he's a little bit of an introvert, right? So I think, like, the not having fans is, like, a huge boost to Harden of all the players. Like, this is the chance, like, where I think Harden may have, like, a great playoff run. But I'm gonna pick the Rockets here. If they don't win, I think there's an argument Daryl Morey should be fired if they lose this series.
Well, and yes, I do agree. Obviously, it's a good. I think that it could be a factor for Harden to not have that negative fan presence. But I feel like you're missing a very important factor. I mean, how is James Harden going to react to the playoffs without strip clubs?
Yeah, there was that survey or post on Reddit, and it showed that James Harden, the better the strip clubs in the city, the worse he played. The worse he played. So we actually may see better James Harden.
He accidentally is going to be focused for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, also he wouldn't be playing OKC, where obviously the people hate him there. But I think it's really a good thing by Daryl Morey is that he can move the roster. Like, he moves heaven and earth to get like the randomest players. You're like this team is out of space every single year, yet somehow they get like one of the top free agents somehow by trade or whatever. But I think the Thunder is definitely a team for the future to keep an eye on. They've got a lot of good young parts and a lot of draft picks coming up. So we'll move Houston forward. And
I don't think that, like what you're saying about Daryl Morey, right? I don't think there's a more creative GM in the league, right?
Yeah.
He just finds the weirdest ways to make like a team this year that we thought, okay, with CP3 there, that's a disaster. And he's turned it into a championship level team again.
Yep. All right, so moving on to the East. So we've got the Milwaukee Bucks and going against the Orlando Magic. Look at that. The home team, the one home team, made it. And I don't think this is going to be a huge competition. Obviously, Vucevic is a great player. They obviously lost their stud in Jonathan Isaac. And I think this is a pretty clean sweep. I think this will be a 4-0. I don't think there's too much to discuss here. What do you guys think?
Next.
So moving on, we've got the Toronto Raptors versus the Brooklyn Nets, the starless Nets, really. It's good that they made the playoffs. I don't think this is going to be too hard, though. Toronto's been super hot in the bubble and during the season. Kyle Lowry is like on a next level playing. So I don't think this is a discussion. Maybe the Nets peep out one win, but I think the Raptors easily win. What do you guys think?
Oh, I think that Toronto's going to win because of their team play and the high level that Kyle Lowry is playing. But I wanted to show some respect to LeVert. He's been good taking over for Nets. Unfortunately, they just don't have the depth of the stars at this point.
Yeah. So this is my response to this question. What does Kyle Lowry? Can Kyle Lowry do anything in this playoffs to like potentially get into the Hall of Fame? Like, I feel like he's been so good for so many years, and after winning that title last year, I think that people are starting to realize like how good a player Kyle Lowry's been for this long. Like, obviously to get into the Hall of Fame is a tough thing, especially for a point guard in this era, right? Like, he'd probably have to lead the team to like the finals to really sort of feel really good about it. But man, oh man, is Kyle Lowry doing special things this year. And Anyway, that's my answer. Obviously, I don't think the Nets are much to talk about.
All right, so moving on to a more interesting series, we've got the Boston Celtics versus the Philadelphia 76ers. I think the Boston Celtics definitely have enough depth, and I think a lot of more players that I like. I thought Al Horford would be better for the 76ers than he has been. Ben Simmons is out, right? Oh, actually, this is actually not too hard. With the stars hurt, I think the Boston Celtics are moving forward quite easily. I think probably 4-2.
Yeah, so the 76ers are such an interesting team because, like, I think it's pretty obvious that they have such serious flaws, but obviously they just have talented players on their roster. And with Ben Simmons out, I don't really see this as a point of contention. I think the Celtics are going to win.
I agree with Dev. I just think it's hard when Ben Simmons is out. It's just Celtics still have their good depth. So
Exactly. I kind of totally forgot about Simmons getting hurt and Embiid got hurt, and I don't think Embiid can lead this team to a series win. What do you think, Shahan?
Oh well, I mean, I think that Embiid can absolutely lead a team to a series win, but I just don't think, unfortunately, this is the situation that he's been put in to succeed. Look, the Sixers have two different players with equality on the back of their jersey, so you know that Gordon Hayward is going to be going absolutely crazy trying to prevent that from happening. So, unfortunately, Celtics win easy. No, and I will say seriously, Ben Simmons being out in this series is such a big deal. Like it's such a big deal. Like this was a team that I always felt like was just a little bit away from sort of things coming together. They had worked with Ben Simmons playing more of a forward role instead of a point guard role, which I think is probably the role that they need to take them. And with Sterling Brown in the starting lineup, but with Simmons out, man, like Embiid is a special player, a top 10 player in this league. But I mean, you're talking about a team in Boston that has multiple top 25 players.
Moving on to the next series, we've got the Indiana Pacers versus the Miami Heat. I think another tough game. Obviously, Sabonis isn't playing for the Pacers, otherwise I think I'd put the Pacers with the win. Obviously, Derrick Jones Jr. just got injured as well. That makes it a little harder. We've got Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, who I think is a pretty great player. For me, I think Pacers have enough weapons, whereas if they can put it all together, I think they can win. So I'm just going to go with the Pacers. I think the Heat are a better choice, but I'll go with Pacers probably 4-3 in the series.
From what I've been seeing in the bubble, the Pacers have been looking to be playing really good, but that's on the back of TJ Warren. He's been averaging 30-something points a game. But like you said, they do have a lot of defensive-minded players, and I just think they've been playing at a higher level than Miami. So just solely for what I'm seeing in the bubble, I think the Pacers will win, but I think it'd be a closer series than the rest of the ones we discussed.
For sure. I think obviously they got Victor Oladipo back, so if he can get back to like where he's been, somewhere near it. They're also coached by one of the best coaches, I think. Nate McMillan's one of the best. Maybe not like top 5, but like, one of the better coaches. But Dev, what do you think about this series?
I disagree. I just think that sometimes in the playoffs it just comes down to who is the best player. And the Heat clearly have the best player in this matchup, so I'm just going to stick with the Heat.
All right, well, it's 2-1. Shahan, what are you thinking, Miami Heat or Indiana Pacers?
That's interesting that you say that the Heat clearly have the best player, because I think that Jimmy Butler is fantastic, right? Like tremendous player. But like I think that Victor Oladipo is at least in that same tier.
Oh,
right?
No, sure, but like I'm not expecting Oladipo to be 100%, right?
No. But like he's played more over the last couple of weeks. Like that's the thing, right? Is like Indiana's been this good with TJ Warren truly leading their team, right?
Yeah.
Like if Oladipo gets back and truly healthy and fully back, like I mean that changes things quite a bit. So yeah, I mean it's hard for me to get excited about this series because I just feel like both of them are so much worse than the Bucks, right? Like I feel like it doesn't matter who I pick here. I'm gonna lean Indiana, but like again, I just who cares? I mean, I love both these teams. I just want to be clear about that. I think they're a lot of fun to watch, but like they're just both so much worse than the Bucks.
I think one thing to note too is Sabonis has been out, and I don't know if he's going to come back for the Pacers. But if he does, that would be a huge lift for the Pacers. He has plantar fasciitis, I think I read.
Right, and he left really early in the bubble with plans to come back. I'm not sure if it'll be this series though, But just to reiterate,
well, he'll have to quarantine for 10 days, right? Even if he does come back.
Yeah. And just kind of reiterating something I said and what Sean said, like Victor Oladipo, if he can come back to like something where he's been, that's just going to add another additional offense. Miles Turner, great center in my mind, and Michael Brogdon as like your third player. That's kind of what the Bucks have been moving the past few years. So, all right, we'll move the Pacers forward. We're going back to the Western Conference. We've got the Lakers and the Houston Rockets. Oh, that's going to be a fun series to watch. But I think in my mind, I'm just going to have to go with the Lakers. I think it'll be kind of tight with the scoring, with the guards, with Westbrook and Harden. But, I think Anthony Davis is going to eat up the post. And come on, it's LeBron fucking James. So I'm going to move Lakers forward. Maybe I say 4-2, 4-3.
Yeah. So Ryan mentioned something in the last thing that I wanted to touch on. So for Steven Adams, what do the Rockets have to really counter them? Well, pretend that Steven Adams was actually Anthony Davis, right? So, and that's what my answer.
Ryan, Lakers moving ahead?
Yeah, Lakers are moving ahead. They have a lot of depth. I just think Anthony Davis needs to step up, which I think he will.
And okay, well, congrats to the Lakers. They're in the conference finals. So let's see who's playing them. Is it going to be the Nuggets or the Clippers? The number 2 and number 3 seed right there. I think personally, it would be a little interesting. I think it's going to be probably 4-3, maybe 4-2. I don't know. The Clippers are pretty damn good. What do you think, Ryan?
So, I completely agree. When I look at the Clippers team and how it's built and the Nuggets team, obviously they're differently built. I think Clippers are more talented and the matchups favor the Clippers. So I have to go with the Clippers. And if I go with the best player, I think Kawhi is the best player.
So, look, first of all, I picked the Jazz to potentially upset the Nuggets in the first round, so that I feel like they're somewhat fraudulent. The one thing that I'll say is I actually do think that the Nuggets are a better matchup for the Clippers than they are for the Jazz. Because look, the Clippers have a lot of really good players, have a lot of really good bigs, but like you don't necessarily feel good about the guys that you're throwing out there on Jokic, right? But just when you're talking about overall teams, I mean, I just don't think that I don't think that Denver has quite enough defensively to keep up with the Clippers, and I do think that that's going to end up being the difference. But I do think it will be a close series. Again, I could see potentially Utah giving Denver a really tough ride, but then Denver potentially giving LA a really tough ride, even though I think obviously there's gaps between those teams.
So I agree. I think this is it's not an easy matchup for the Clippers, but I do think this is pretty easily going to be a win for the Clippers. I do think there's maybe a world where the Nuggets could eke this out, but it's not our universe if there is one.
Yeah, the big thing that you have to say about it, right, is that, like, again, they have 2 elite wing defenders in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but, and Denver has more than 2 guys on the wings who you have to worry about, right? But it's like that. Then it gets to okay, well, if you completely take, Jamal Murray out of this series, is Gary Harris going to go for a huge amount? And he hasn't played a lot, right? Too is the other thing. So it's just it's a tough situation for the Nuggets, I think.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, Shahan. The Denver, they have tons of depth. I think it's a great team, great matchup compared with the Jazz. Jokic, you're not going to throw out Montrezl Harrell out there, right? Or Zubac. For that reason, I think it'll be a tighter series. But yeah, we're moving the Clippers forward to the conference finals.
And the one other thing that I'll say is that, look, if Jokic wants to step up and be like, I'm going to go for 35 to 40 on these fools, that changes things. But that's never been Jokic before.
Right. And it's kind of like the same thing when the Spurs played the Memphis Grizzlies back in the day when the Mavs won. The bigs kind of just dominated the Spurs, and that's why they lost. So let's see what happens there. But we've got our conference finals set in the West. Let's go back to the East. We've got the Milwaukee Bucks facing the Indiana Pacers. With Sabonis back, I think it could be interesting. But I definitely think Bucks are going to move forward no matter what.
Yeah, they're just so much better, man. I know that they haven't been playing their best in the bubble, but when this team gets rolling, which this is the moment, right? They get the series against Orlando where they're not going to have a competitive series to really get into shape. And if they're rolling against Indiana, they can absolutely sweep the Pacers.
What do you think, Ryan?
I agree with that. I think the Bucks with Giannis, I think that's too much to handle. I think Pacers will give a valiant fight, but I don't think it'll be enough.
Yeah, I personally think the Pacers could win a game or two, but Sean's not wrong. I think they could also be swept. So let's see what happens there. Moving on to the next series, we've got the Boston Celtics versus the Toronto Raptors. This gets a little interesting. I think a lot of people would say the Raptors make it. For me, I think if the Celtics get it together, they'd put up a pretty decent fight. So you know what? I'm gonna be going shaving against the grain here. I'm gonna go with the Boston Celtics 4-3. What do you think, Dev?
All right, so this is a really interesting matchup for sure, and it's one where I do think the Raptors are going to win because I just don't really. I really believe in what they built here, and like Pascal, Van Vliet, like their team is just so nice, and they play such great basketball together. I would love the Raptors to move forward. Um, I think this team got like really underrated during the finals last year because Kawhi did win the finals MVP, but like honestly, it was kind of a weaker finals MVP of the recent ones because really the Raptors team is stacked, and they're still stacked.
Yeah, I think that, look, first of all, it's important to note, you never underestimate the heart of a champion. You never do it. But, when you look at this Toronto team, right, I think that this 2019 Toronto team is always going to get told wrong. Like, I feel like the story's always going to be like, wow, they weren't very good, and then Kawhi saved everything. And that's just not what fucking happened, right? Like, this was a team that went 8 deep every single week. This was a team with Siakam that had a star in the making. This is a team in Kyle Lowry, who I think, again, has a very legitimate Hall of Fame case if he can keep doing this for another year or two and take the Raptors to potentially another conference finals. Like, this is a special team coached by a special coach with a special fan base that obviously won't be a factor here, but, like, this is like the whole package, right? And they kind of got that last thing. I think that, look, this is such a tough series for me to pick because I do think that the Celtics have more talented players, especially at the top. But look, I just think that the way that Toronto defends is absolutely elite, right? Like best of the best elite. The way that they move the ball is elite of the elite, right? The big thing I'm worried about is how Siakam's offense translates to the playoffs. But if he can stay with it, average a less efficient 22 a game, I mean, I think that Toronto is in good shape to be able to move forward against the Celtics.
I think it's going to come down to, does Tatum step up or does Siakam step up? Because I think they both have a lot of talent and have a lot of depth down their boards. I just think Raptors with Nick Nurse and what they've been doing with that team, I think that's the X factor. And I think he'll find a way to use Siakam. So I just have to go in a close series with the Toronto Raptors. But I have to give the respect to the Celtics. I think Brad Stevens is great. I think they do have a lot for me as the Raptors.
For sure. And I think what we discuss is it's definitely going to be a fun series to watch, and it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. So let's go back to the West. So right here, we've got the Lakers, we've got the Clippers, the fight for Staples Center. So right here, we got the Lakers, we got the Clippers, LeBron, AD, PG, Kawhi. Man, which one? You know what? I'm going to have to go with the Clippers here. I think LeBron is going to be next level in this matchup. I think AD is going to be fantastic. They have some good depth. Obviously, missing Avery Bradley. They have the worst Morris brother. So I think with that said, I'm going to have to go with the Clippers. Obviously, I'm going to do 4-3, but I think the Clippers move forward.
We had this conversation a couple weeks ago, right? Like before the bubble started, that the Clippers are clearly the more talented team, right? They've got, LeBron and AD are top 2, and then they've got maybe like the next 5 most talented players, right? I don't think that's remotely in question. But when you're looking at roster fit, and I said this at the time, I said this a while back because I think that a lot of you guys were talking about the Clippers even back then, right? When I look at roster fit, LeBron and Anthony Davis is fucking unfair. It's unfair, right? Like that, it is a perfect fit. It is as perfect a fit as has ever existed in basketball. Like you're talking about a guy who on the pick and roll is as deadly as giving the pass and as deadly as dishing the ball off, right? Like it is an insane fit. And I think that heading into this year, I was optimistic about what LeBron and Anthony Davis could be together. But I looked at that team and was like, well, they're good, but like, who are you counting on? Who are you relying on? And the answer is everybody, right? Like everybody in different times has stepped up and provided a big role. And I just look at the last couple of finals teams and championship teams. Actually, I'll remove the Warriors from that because they were unfair. But like before that, you look at the last couple of championship teams and finals teams. Like you're talking about teams where guys have been able to step up. You've had multiple options that you've been able to go to. You've had your stars, and that's what everybody relied on. But James Posey's able to hit a shot. John Paxson's able to hit a shot. Steve Kerr's able to hit a shot, right? And I just look at this Lakers team. I just think that all year long, they have been better than the Clippers, right? All year long, they have played better than the Clippers. And I think that we've been waiting for the Clippers to hit that last gear, but I am less certain, I feel like, than I think everybody else that last gear exists in their first year together. Playoff P has never really existed. Kawhi, has been very good in the playoffs, but like again, we talked about how good that Raptors team was. I think that Raptors team last year was arguably as good, if not better, than this year's Clippers team. I think that it's going to be the Lakers. I think the Lakers are heading to the NBA Finals.
Awesome. Let's go to the Lakers fan. What do you think, Dev?
All right. So I actually agree with Shahan here. I do think this is going to be the Lakers, and I was more convinced watching that first game because I think that LeBron had a really awful first game, right? Coming out of the bubble, and he's played awful most of the bubble, but he had such an awful first game, and they still looked like the better team. And I actually think for the matchup, Lou Will coming back is really bad for the Clippers. I think that is like a negative for the matchup, to me. So when I see the two rosters, I look at it and I say, look, AD is just going to dominate. He's dominated every game against the Clippers. He's going to dominate again. That's a given. If LeBron can put together 4 good games, I think they're going to win.
Ryan, who do you think is winning this matchup?
Okay, so Ashish, I liked your points about the depth in the players the Clippers have, and they have some players that fit niches and roles that the Lakers don't have. And then obviously the Lakers have Anthony Davis, which is hard for the Clippers to match up. He's Zubac or Harrell. I mean, I think Harrell can do a decent job, but it's still not the greatest matchup. So I think that's going to be tough. I think the Clippers, I like Doc Rivers over Frank Vogel, even though Frank Vogel's been doing a good job. My question is going to be, is Patrick Beverley playing that series or not? Because he has a calf injury, and it's questionable. He's been out for most of the bubble after that injury. I mean, I think he's going to play, but does he last to that point? I don't know. I think that's the X factor, to have those defenders to switch on LeBron, to have PG on him, to have Kawhi on him, to have Beverley. There's a lot of different people to irritate him. So I think I have to go with the Lakers. I think that LeBron pulls out 4 good games, like Dev said, and I think that Anthony Davis as well. And I think that's just hard to stop for the Clippers.
And I think that's actually a really good point. When I was thinking about it, I know it's going to be a tough matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers did beat the Clippers. In my mind, on paper, I think the Clippers could put it together, but clearly the Lakers have put it together. And you see in the bubble, LeBron's on like 7th gear. He's been well rested. He had the extra break. I mean, like, sky's the limit for this guy. So I wouldn't be surprised. Let's go to the Eastern Conference Finals. We've got the Milwaukee Bucks, and look at that, the Toronto Raptors back at it again. I think what's cool is you look at Kawhi, who left, and obviously we're putting the Raptors in the conference finals, whereas LeBron leaves the Cavaliers, they're not making the playoffs. That's pretty interesting. So for me, I had the Raptors losing last round, so I'm just going to have to go with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think it'll be interesting for sure. You guys had some really good points. You got Marc Gasol, you've got Ibaka, you've got some really good defenders, really good scorers, but I think Giannis is going to take him to the finals.
Would any player's legacy be more hurt by another team winning than Kawhi if the Raptors were to go to the finals without him? Like, that would invalidate a lot of what just happened last year, right?
Yeah.
That said, I don't think it's going to happen. I would love for it to happen. I love the Raptors. I think it's a great team. But I don't see what they have that can match up with all of the firepower that Milwaukee brings out there. And again, I will say, too, a lot of this is dependent on the fact that I assume that the Milwaukee wasn't trying that hard in those 8 playing games, right? Like, I just assumed that they weren't going all out, and they didn't play a whole lot of their top guys for the whole series. But, I mean, I just look at what Milwaukee's been able to do really the last 2 years, right? Like, it took some crazy bounces. It took some crazy leaps for the Raptors to get into the finals last year over the Milwaukee Bucks. And I think that Milwaukee's going to come back to the series even more motivated than they were last year. So I think that Giannis Antetokounmpo is heading to the NBA Finals.
For me, I think obviously Giannis is the best player on the court with these two teams. I feel that when I look at the composition of the teams, they both have great coaches. They both have great starting lineups. I think the Raptors have more of a depth coming off of the bench than the Bucks, and I think that having Marcus Hall, even though he's on past his prime, I think he's a smart defensive mind and a little underrated at this point. But yes, he is past his prime, so I get it. And then Ibaka, so I think that can cause trouble for Giannis, and I feel like Nick Nurse will find a way to put him in the spots he doesn't want to be. I don't know. I feel like if Kyle Lowry can play at the level he's been playing, and they kind of frustrate Giannis, I think the Raptors might be able to pull this off.
Yeah, especially if Pascal Siakam, plays out of his mind, which we've seen before. Dev, what do you think about this series?
So here's the thing, right? Are the Raptors going to go Game of Thrones again and build the Great Wall in the north? The problem is they're in the south, and the ice wall is going to melt in Orlando, and I'm going to pick the Bucks.
All right. Well, Dev's been watching a lot of Game of Thrones recently, so there you go. So we're gonna move the Bucks forward. So we've got a finals matchup, people. We've got the Milwaukee Bucks, LA Lakers. Oh my goodness! You know what? I'm gonna come last on this one. I'm gonna throw it to Dev. What do you think's gonna happen here?
All right. So this is the matchup that everyone has been waiting for, right? I think that when you look at the two teams that should make the finals, these are it, right? They're the ones who worked the hardest in the regular season. They've been dominating people, and I do think, like Ryan mentioned, depth. I think part of the positive with the Bucks stuff is, look, the Bucks players have gotten a lot of minutes. Look, they didn't play any of their starters in the bubble. The starters are only playing 30 minutes in the playoffs, or in the regular season. I mean, I think Giannis is going to win MVP with the least minutes ever for an MVP, which is insane. So I do think the Bucks are going to be well rested. They're going to have a good time, but I'm a Lakers fan, so they're not going to win. The Lakers are my pick.
All right, fair enough. What about you, Shahan? Who's winning the finals?
Yeah, I have probably spent the last, I guess at this fucking point has been a year, the last year of my life trying to avoid having to pick this series because, oh my God, is it a tough one, right? You got Giannis Antetokounmpo, best player in the world arguably right now, about to be a two-time reigning MVP, biggest mismatch on the planet, right? And I don't think that the Lakers have an obvious cover for him, right? Unless they're going to throw LeBron at him. It's going to have to be a team defensive effort. Depth-wise, I think that the Bucks have more depth, right? I think that they are better coached. I do think that Coach Bud is one of those top five-ish coaches, whereas I think that Coach Vogel is a plus coach, but not necessarily a game-changing coach, right? But that said, when the NBA decided to make this bubble, right? They would have tried to do it regardless, but I'll tell you what, it was absolutely a factor. The urgency, the money that they put into it, knowing that LeBron James had a chance to win a championship. Yeah. LeBron James is 34 years old. Giannis is 24, 25. Still very young, still has a lot of years left. There is nobody in this bubble who is going to be going harder than LeBron James because he knows that, I'm not saying this is his last chance, but this is one of his very last chances to go out and do this. He is not going to go in there Cleveland versus the Warriors. He's not going in as an underdog. And the other thing, too, is that other than that 2011 series, LeBron's been tremendous as a truly competitive team, right? When he's had as much talent as everybody else, he's been tremendous. Again, I hate having to pick this series. I wish that I didn't have to pick this series. But if I have to pick this series, give me LeBron James, give me the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah. And to go into that matchup with you talked about who's going to guard Giannis. We did see an extremely competitive and both teams going full force game before the end of the regular season, before all this COVID. And LeBron did bully Giannis a lot when he was defending him. And LeBron has quietly been one of the best defenders in the league this year. And I really think that's the key to this matchup. In the fourth quarter, I don't expect them to be on him the whole time. In the fourth quarter, LeBron has to play well defensively.
Yeah, and I think that's a really big part, right? Because I think that we've all seen, especially since they've been in the bubble, but even before that, LeBron hasn't offensively been his best self this year. He's been a really good version of himself, but he hasn't been his best self. And when I look at them play, though, the thing that that really stands out about LeBron is that he has been willing to take on that role of kind of the do everything player, right? It's kind of not to the extent of being the Draymond of the team, but kind of that role, right, where if you need rebounds, he's going to go and get them. You need assists, he's going to go and get them. You need him to guard somebody, he's going to go and do it. You need him to score, he's going to go and do it. And I think that that's a tremendous amount of growth, first of all, by LeBron. And second of all, I think that's a tremendous amount of trust in his teammates, obviously Anthony Davis leading them. So I just look at this team. I just think that the way that they've been focused really all the way back to the beginning of the regular season, I think has been special. And again, if LeBron James gets to the finals with a real chance and to have it be a 50-50 series, I think that he's going to be better in those moments than the Milwaukee Bucks will be.
Well, what's your input here, Ryan? Who's winning the finals this year? What do you think? You had a lot of time to think about it.
I was hearing Dan's comments. I was hearing Shohan's comments. It's tough because I was thinking of the Bucks roster, and I was thinking of the Los Angeles Lakers roster, and obviously Coach Bud is a fantastic coach, and I'm sure he'll do game plans to try to thwart what the Lakers are doing. And you posed, who does the Lakers have to guard Giannis besides LeBron? And I'm thinking of it, who does the Bucks have to guard LeBron besides Giannis? And I can't think of a single other person that matches up with LeBron except Giannis. I think the Lakers are gonna take it.
Yeah, good points there. Obviously, yeah, we've touched on Coach Budenholzer, who's obviously one of the best, especially what he did with that Atlanta team back in the day. So I think I have to go with the Lakers. When you think about it, I love Giannis. When you have LeBron and AD, you have two of the best 5 players in the NBA. I don't think you can stop both of them. At best, you can probably limit LeBron to a little bit, but like Anthony Davis, I think is going to feast. I think Budenholzer is the best coach out of the series in the finals. I think the Milwaukee Bucks have the better depth. But at the end of the day, you have AD and LeBron versus Giannis. And in that case, who's the second best player? Chris Middleton, great player. I don't think he brings what AD or LeBron bring to the game. So I'm going to have to go with the Lakers. I think it'll be a fun, interesting matchup because of the depth and the coaching of the Bucks. But I think the LA Lakers are your champions. With that, I think that wraps up another great episode of the Ashish and Friends podcast. We'll have more episodes throughout the playoffs, and we'll do an award show as well. So until next time, see ya.